Oh God. All right, here we go. We're here. Okay. Okay, snuck up
Uh,
on me there.
I mean, what are we doing here? Like
Yeah, we're
as far
doing it.
as
That's what we're doing. How you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful, man. I'm doing great. It's been busy this last little week and a half stretch for me, and so I'm not through it, but it's been going well. I'm conquering the things that need to be defeated. What about you, dude? Let's just skip over what I've been doing because that's just called life. It's fucking boring. All right. And let's get to Sean's world, man. Just go here, go there, do a little dabble this, do a little dabble of that. Oh, I'm just gonna like randomly go to Vegas and check out the Sphere and this awesome group called Fish. Dude, fucking let's talk. Let's go. How was it?
Yeah, Vegas was Vegas, and I don't know. It's pretty fun to just kind of go and just like walk around the strip and walk around Fremont Street and just look at people. Just some different kinds of people down there, and and then of course going to the Sphere, which is this new stadium in Vegas that has just incredible. It's just the newest stadium on the planet right now with all the bells and whistles, and there's a big globe with images on the outside, and then this crazy like LED screen on the inside that's literally the entire inside of this globe that's I don't know like 1,000 feet tall or something, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And yeah, went and saw jam band Fish, and it was my first time seeing them, and not many people listen to them, but they have this like huge cult following. So actually a lot of people listen to them, but you just don't really hear it on the mainstream radio, or it doesn't, jump out at you. I also had a question randomly, like last time we were recording when we recorded with Ben, which is going to be this episode, I guess. But what's up with that red lantern behind you?
Oh, dude, I don't think you know the story, man. The red lantern behind me was a gift from one of our viewers, listeners. We did our first like YouTube live, and she was like, "I would love to send you something." And I was like, she didn't tell me what it was. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna trust you and give you my address, and hopefully, what I receive is something that I will appreciate
or something.
Dude, check it out. This thing, like, she sent me the batteries and everything. I can put it on and everything. So, yeah,
What is it from? Is it from like an event? Does she like how'd she get it?
She just thought it would be cool to have in the background of my set. And I say that for anyone not watching, I say that in quotations, my set. So, like you've got down here like your gear, and like a little further down is a dog and a moose book and stuff like that. So anyways,
Nice.
yeah, that's the story behind the red lantern behind me.
Hell yeah.
But yeah,
Cool.
dude. So Vegas, you survived. It doesn't sound like things got too gnarly or out of hand, or you didn't need like an IV drip to recover the next day or anything like that. No.
No, I didn't. I kept it in the lane. Yeah, I'm not in my 20s anymore.
I'm looking for a fear and loathing story here, Sean. I'm looking for some Johnny Depp, something or nothing. No.
Nope. I
Hunter S. Thompson.
Drugs.
Okay.
And only got maybe tipsy one night, but was mostly just enjoying slapping a $10 bill on the roulette table and seeing what'll happen. And yeah, so I'll probably go back. I like Vegas. I'll probably go back in 5 years. It's cool. It's cool spot to go,
dude. And shout out to our homies, the Romeos, Devin and Damon. They are the Fish fans, and they I guess they had 3 tickets and someone dropped out, and Sean and I were asked if we would be interested, and I was very interested. I just couldn't quite get away, and Sean is loosey goosey, so it worked out.
Yeah, I just do whatever I want all the time. So it turns I just have such a bachelor like schedule. I just am off. I have a lot of downtime and
That hair, dude.
and but it is kind of like, it has its downsides too. But anyways, so yeah, here in Alaska, this is what's going on in the mushing world. It's pretty quiet. It's not a lot of mushing happening because the temperatures have kind of gone up here in late April. Maybe in some places it's cool enough in the earliest parts of the morning to still get out on the trail. If it freezes at night, that makes for like a nice morning mushing. But by the time the afternoon rolls around, and especially like down here, and I mean, even I think up in Fairbanks and interior too, it's really soft out on the trails. So much so that you really can't. You can hook up a team, but it's just kind of messy and punchy, and there's puddles everywhere and maybe mud showing, and so it's like kind of the end of the sleds are. People are getting their last runs in with the sled, and then they'll, if not already, put them away, and you just get out there with your cross country skis and a couple dogs, or get a fat bike out and go for a little lap. But it's messy this time of year. There's just like a bunch, like infinite melting snow everywhere. So it's kind of gross to just like, you can't really go in too many places. And you can go into the mountains, like the Brooks Range right now would be great. People go up there still this time of year, and that's great conditions.
I wanted to ask, because I saw, not to cut you off, but I am going to cut you off.
Cut me off anytime, dude.
I mean, every once in a while.
Totally cut me off.
I saw a video from Amanda Otto where wherever she was, and I didn't know, I assumed Denali, but maybe I'm wrong. Wherever she was, it was still snowy. She wasn't running the dogs though. She was like on a mountaintop or on a hill or whatever, and she was like sliding down the hill and stuff. And so
glissading, I believe.
Glissading.
I believe so. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, it's a great time to hire in the mountains. You're gonna have better snow conditions. People are still backcountry skiing and stuff. I'll probably do that sometime this week, and I'm going to Alaska in like 20 minutes.
Glissading, dude, is the act of descending a steep snow or scree-covered slope via a controlled slide on one's feet or buttocks.
Buttocks, yes.
Buttocks. Okay, interesting. Thank you for the knowledge. Once again, just dropping knowledge. That's what we do here on Mushing Alaska Podcast.
Yeah, glissading.
So let me ask this, just in reference to where we are in the season. So you mentioned it's like a slosh pit right now, and it's muddy, and it's not a great time to be running unless you're kind of in maybe a certain remote area of Alaska or whatever. So like, what do you do with dogs in this down season? I know a couple of mushers are still running their dogs, but like not all of the mushers are. So like, is it just a matter of like, you just let them run free and they have like an area where they can do that? You still like, you take them on walks? Like what are we doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be, everyone's got a driveway and a road, and depending on what your situation is, with your neighborhood, you can find a back road or something to go and walk your dogs, or you can take them maybe on a short run in harness, but also like no harm in just kind of letting them hang out in the yard and have some downtime. But they do get pretty rowdy after a few days at their houses. And so it's nice to try and get them a little bit of, it's not even really exercise as much as just like fun and like, getting out and just doing some like loose runs with your dogs, and just letting them kind of be on vacation a little bit. whatever that might mean for some dogs. They do really like thoroughly enjoy just hanging out at their house, maybe coming inside for, the evening. Maybe other dogs where they really, really want to run and are maybe less content to be hanging out at the house. They're not as homebodies. And so you get those dogs out and loose, walking. Some of them might need to be on a leash. Some of them might be free running. Some of them, you can get them in harness, do ski joring, bike joring, canter cross, those kind of harness activities. And, you still might be able to bust the sled out if you get out at 7 a.m. and take a small team. You can do a lot with a 4-dog team, or you can just kind of go and you're a 6-dog team and just kind of go out there with a little, like almost boldly kind of go out onto the trail and see if it's still mushable. And if not, it's like, you could probably just take your old crappy sled and get out there. And if you're really, a go-getter, I see Josie Tears taking her team down to Southeast Alaska. Like a lot of people are preparing for summers with their dogs on the glacier, and they're getting like all that gear packed up, and the logistics are crazy. You got to drive your dogs down to the Southeast somehow. And so, a lot of dogs are like, I know Dallas Seavey's got his glacier operation, and his dad does too. And that whole family has, there's the Seavey brother that is down in the South Central. And then you've got, Travis Beals has a glacier operation and a tour. So everyone's kind of gearing up for tourism if they have that, but not every musher's doing tourism in the summer. A lot of people are just hanging out with their dogs, doing fun stuff. And then they have a day job.
So let me ask this, in terms of like, for the dogs that aren't content, just chillaxing, what are the best ways for you to like burn their energy during this off season?
Yeah, I mean, you call the off season all summer long, and this time of year, it's gonna be. You can still run them in the early mornings. In the summer, when the snow's melted, the trails are better and it's easier to run the dogs. And you do it when it's cool. But this time of year, like the trails are, you can't really take an ATV. Barely can take a sled. You can't really take a snow machine. Right. So, but you could do it with skis, the cross country skis. You might be able to do it with a bike, like on the road, or you could maybe do it just running, going for a jog, and just do 1 or 2 dogs at a time, 2 times a day or something. Or some people have like a giant pen and they just let like 8 or 9 dogs loose. Some dogs are really well trained and they just are loose, and you go and take them on a walk through the woods because they live really remotely and you don't have to deal with vehicle traffic. So it's varies drastically from place to place, and just depending on your dogs and your kennel and your location. But there's like a bunch of options to get your dogs out and about, even if it's still in harness or not in harness.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking of, some of the various mushers where they have like the winters off, right? So they're like fully dedicated to being able to train, and now in the summer they're working full time. And so I'm always kind of curious, like, how do they bridge that gap where they're working and possibly having to train the dogs and care for them? So like, I don't know, if someone is working full time, is it a thing where like the dogs could just be in their dog yard for like a good majority of the off season? Or
I mean, they are going to spend a lot of time in the dog yard, yes, but even if you work a long day, like the sun's up at 4:30 and it's down at 11 o'clock already, like, so maybe it's like 5 a.m. I got up at 5 on accident and I just was like, damn, it's already like light out. That's crazy. That already happened. I mean, we're a week from May and we're 2 months from the solstice, so it checks out. But yeah, you get home, it's 8 p.m. You can still go on an hour, 2-hour thing, and still get to bed on time. So yeah, there's the dogs are going to be, you know, potentially at home all day outside, but they're still like playing with each other. They're wrestling and barking at the squirrels nearby and and having fun with each other, having like the dogs, they do that. Like that's part of what's so cool about these sled dogs is they love their human and they love the connection with the person that they're around. But when they're not around, and even when they are around, they like equally like just hanging out with each other. Like they're a lot more independent than a regular dog who's really like most dogs that my friends have are really like their value is measured by how much time they spend with their owner. With these dogs that some of them are perfectly content to spend 10 straight hours just playing with each other, barking at each other, and you live out in the middle of nowhere, you can let the dogs bark, do their thing. They're chewing on bones or whatever. And then they're not like stuck inside for that day. They're at their houses and they're fine. And then you get home and you're going to get them some dinner and you can get them all off their tethers, and that you try to get the dogs off their house set up once a day. If you're that was our goal at all the places that I worked. And that's probably everyone's goal. But like I said, some dogs are like homebodies and they're like, yeah, I mean, you let me off. They like go pee on someone else's house. And then next thing you know, they're loose and they just go right back to their house because that's their safe space.
Got you. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I guess the summary there is like once a day is kind of what you're hoping for in terms of getting them off and out and stretching their legs and that sort of thing. Well, I know that, this man, Sean, I swear you're just this, you got all these adventures. I know you're like itching to get out the door to go ski some more. So I guess let's transition. And if I can just, for maybe a few minutes here, I know I'm sorry to inconvenience you, but if I just inconvenience you for maybe 6 to 7 minutes, maybe more, maybe less, who knows? We'll see here. But let's talk about our time with our guest, our guest, Ben Good. We recorded this last week and before you went out to Vegas, and man, I have to say, afterwards, you and I were chatting, and we have fun with all of our guests, but we really just enjoyed our time with Ben, and super down to earth, and yeah, I don't know. I'll turn it over to you, but thoughts on our time with Ben.
Yeah, I think he's a super cool dude, like just real easy to talk to and get along with, and he enjoys listening to our little podcast, and it's just fun. Sometimes I just feel like, get this feeling that we're just there's certainly an element of truth that we're just talking about, like we're not experts. We're talking about mushing, and it's like just a bunch of BS, and you kind of like start to get like I personally get like a little like what's the like syndrome where you feel like you're not actually the expert.
Imposter syndrome?
Yeah, imposter syndrome.
Something like that, maybe.
Yeah, that is it. And and you're like, God, we're just still gonna record stuff, and then you go and you have this talk with Ben, and he's like, I've been listening to every episode of training all year. He's I saw him out on the Iditarod trail. I had like a tough week leading up to that recording, and so I was like just not in a great place, like kind of once we pressed record, and then like the second I saw Ben and we start talking, it was just grinning from ear to ear the entire time. It was a really like smooth, easy flowing conversation where all three of us were just connected, and it's like one of those 1 + 1 + 1 actually equals 4, right? It's just like it was better than the sum of its parts, is my point. And
thank you.
I was really enjoyed our talk. It was cool to hear like he had a pretty smooth Iditarod, I think, which was doesn't happen too often to too many teams, and it says a lot about his skill as a musher and training and his dogs and his accumulated experience doing this over the years. And yeah, just good vibes, just good conversation. And I think sometimes we maybe don't have a lot of rhythm when we're talking, but this was not one of those times. It was just a lot of rhythm to this conversation. I really liked it.
Yeah, I think I agree. One thing, Sean and I aren't a podcast. We're not like meeting beforehand a lot of times to like, all right, here is the blueprint of today. And a lot of it is just like Sean has his angle, I have my angles, and hopefully somewhere in the middle we were able to kind of cover all of that. What I liked about our time with Ben is he said that it was really his first time breaking down the Iditarod with someone where he can actually break it down with, who has done it, who's familiar, who's experienced. It's like, you're talking to your friends and you get that question all the time, like, well, how is the Iditarod? And it's like, you can't really justify how the Iditarod was in a couple of minutes, talking with some friends that maybe they follow the race, but they really don't know it. So it was nice to kind of go back and kind of go checkpoint to checkpoint with him. And then, along the way, certain stories or certain things he was talking about we'd veer off to one way or the other and kind of go down a little bit of a hole, but then always kind of come back to the route and his time on the race. So yeah, we had a good time and sense of humor was good. You guys will hear Sean talking about a story.
The upstream dub was my favorite thing. One of my favorite shit. Yeah, Ben's got a good sense of humor. Good vibes, man.
Yeah, and the upstream dub story, you'll hear it introduced, but it like multiple times kind of makes an appearance, which shout out to Ben for keeping that thing living. So yeah, and then our next guest is going to be Severin Cathry, and we've got that recording scheduled, so we're excited for that. And the only other thing really to mention on the news front is that I guess Iditarod signups they're going to be here before you know it. So we looked that up, June 29th, Musher sign up and volunteer appreciation picnic. So I'll be interested to see what's going on. Sean will be out fishing at that point. So we'll have to figure out what the plan is then. But beyond that, it's good to connect with you, bro. I hope that everyone enjoys this next episode or our next guest. It was a good time. Sean, you got something else? What you got?
Yeah, one more thing to wrap up is we have our first and only sponsor of the podcast is sled.talk.com.
Let's go.
And we got our podcast is up on their website as one of the I don't know if we're sponsoring them or they're sponsoring us, but we're
fully supporting that website.
We support them, and Sean Williams who made it, he supports us. I think it's just a mutual thing, but we'll say that sled.talk.com is sponsoring us. We'll say that. And we encourage you to go to their website for all things mushing. If you're in the mushing community or want to be part of it up here or anywhere in the world, that's the place to go. And it's gained a lot of traction over the last few weeks. So thank you to them. We probably should have started with that, but I hope y'all enjoy our nice conversation with Ben.
Alrighty, folks. Next up on the Mushing Alaska podcast, our guest is Ben Good. He comes to us from North Pole, Alaska. He is no longer an Iditarod rookie, but he just completed his rookie run in the 2024 Iditarod. He is a Yukon 300 winner. We will make sure to talk about that. But we'd like to welcome on Mr. Ben Good. How you doing today?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on, man. We definitely appreciate it. And I know you got a family and full-time job and sled dogs. So yeah, we appreciate your time for sure.
No, I'm happy to be here. This is great. I've been listening to you guys since fall training. I kind of found you guys in like September on 4-wheeler training, and kind of got all caught up on all the past episodes during that time, and have been following you ever since. And so I really like what you guys are doing, and I appreciate that there's somebody out there putting us on the podcast spotlight. So thanks.
Yeah, man. It was cool because I don't think I mean, we've certainly been in the same room before that I did ride this year. Because I handled for the Quest in the 18 for the 1,000. And, I'd never heard of you because I've been mushing for 2 years. So of course I hadn't heard of Lance Mackey practically, but, and then I was like, and good won the 300, huh? Okay. And then that name just was like, all right, that'll be tattooed in my brain forever. This guy won the 300. And, anyway, so, but then in the Iditarod, I think I saw you at like Finger Lake for the first time. And I was like, is that, I don't even know what you look like, but like, is that Ben? And then, yeah, you said something like, what did you say? You said that part of the reason, a slice of the pie, part of the reason that you signed
a fraction of a percent
was that.
I think I said you guys nudged me or something like that. Yeah, it was part of the equation for sure.
What was it? Why? What do you mean by that? I still don't understand.
Well, I guess I'll, with everything I have going on, it's really hard to justify doing something that's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars and take you away from home for, 3+ weeks. And plus, besides that, all the training and everything. And I just kept trying to push it away. And I kept trying to go, I'm 50-50, right? Like I should do the Iditarod. I should do it because I have the dogs. I have a decent job. I have some time off, but I shouldn't do Iditarod because I got a family. I got a kid going to college next year. But that you guys just kind of kept it in the back of my mind. Like I should do this. So it was going back with like 51% no, 51% yes. And so you guys were kind of nudging me into that 51% yes throughout the fall training.
That's awesome, man. I definitely know that you're among this elite class of mushers that have a bunch of kids. Or how many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids.
3 kids. You got 3 kids. Kelly Maxner, someone comes to mind with like 5 kids. And it's incredible to see parents and moms and dads out there doing this. And Brendan's shaking his head because he's got his hands full with a 2-year-old, one singular 2-year-old.
Just one singular 2-year-old. Yeah. And I'm just like, man, like I can't imagine like keeping a kennel together, a team together, doing like, it's a lot of sacrifice on your end, but also in everyone in your family's end as well. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I will say that it would be a lot harder with a 2-year-old in the house. With teenagers and a 7-year-old, yeah. I mean, my son was able to drive my truck and trailer on the Yukon Quest 300 this year. So, and then, they can feed the dogs when I'm gone. And so, yeah, doing it with a 2-year-old. I did the Yukon Quest, the full Quest in 2017, when who is now my 7-year-old was less than 1. I can't remember now. She was born in August and I did the Quest in February. So she was, less than 1 year old.
Damn.
So
yeah, I'm curious about, and I will. Brendan and Ben remind me, like we're gonna ask you like how you got into mushing and your origin story, but I like the cold open anyways. So like in 2017, 1,000-mile Yukon Quest, it has half the checkpoints. I don't know what the weather was doing, but I'm certain it was cold at some point, if not the whole time. And then you run Iditarod 7 years later.
Yep.
And, what compare and contrast?
Well, I think I've got this question kind of in the last month or so from some other people. And the biggest difference is doing the Yukon Quest as a rookie, I think probably is a lot more challenging because of the cold. and because of the lack of checkpoints. The one upside that the Quest has is that you've got people that you know meeting you at checkpoints. And that's at least for me, that's huge. Somebody to rally you, somebody to give you the attaboy, to keep your head in perspective, or to keep your head in check. But I mean, the Quest as a rookie for me, it was like every run is a beat down. It's the cold, it's the hills. You know, you hear how hard it is, but you can't really understand how hard it is until you get out there. Now, 7 years later, I've got a bunch of races under my belt. So Iditarod definitely was more, I don't know if enjoyable. Yeah, more enjoyable, more manageable. So yeah, like that. And just the amount of daylight too. I mean, this is the same stuff that's kind of already well known, but yeah, the amount of daylight and the temperatures. I mean, it wasn't a warm Iditarod by any means this year. It was actually about perfect weather-wise, but just the fact that it warms up in the afternoon is nice. Where the Quest, you know, if it's 40 below or 45 below at night, maybe it warms up to 35 below in the sunshine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And then you got to pack your sled for more stuff, like that run from Pelly. What is it? Pelly to Dawson is 210 miles, and there's some hospitality spots, but there's nowhere to reload, nowhere to get a more dog food or more people food. So, you know, my sled probably weighed 600 pounds when I left Pelly Crossing in 2017, which was ridiculous. But
you got like pots and pans like hanging out the side.
Yeah, like
you look like
exactly.
Sam from Lord of the Rings with his backpack.
That's exactly what it was. I think I had I saw some of the volunteers like rolling their eyes and cursing out the guy who packed 9 drop bags to Pelly Crossing. And then I fit almost all 9 bags into my sled. So yeah.
Did you do 3 stops before Dawson, or?
I did a quick stop at Stepping Stone, and then I went on and camped out a little bit after that. And then I camped at Scroggy Creek, and then I camped again after King Solomon's Dome. So I did 3 campouts. So that's 4 runs. Yeah.
I remember Riley Dyke was like, I think it seems like a pretty universal truth probably for the Quest, is just that it's probably harder to finish for a rookie than the Iditarod. But the Iditarod's like way more competitive than the Quest if you're trying to finish up in the top 10 or top 20 or whatever. Is kind of what he said. And I mean, that kind of might be changing a little bit now that you have, 40 teams in the race versus 80 or 90 teams, but still.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of validity to that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's you were probably, one of the most, if not, I don't know, definitely one of the most experienced rookies this year, and
sure.
And you could see that in your body language at all the checkpoints, saw some rookies that really looked like they would have loved to see their family at some checkpoints and getting those words of encouragement. And then even some of the veterans, up there really struggling with sleep deprivation in the front of the race. And if you have your husband or wife there, that would make a huge just energy boost. And so, yeah, you see that, and they're just kind of, and then instead of that having those words of encouragement, from the people that you love most in the world for being right there with you, they're just kind of like sitting down, like at the checkpoint, just like, I'm like, what is it like? And I'm like, I try to say something, but it's, it just doesn't mean the same if it's coming from me. So
I'll say 2 things about that. That was one of the things I was the most nervous about in to being able to finish Iditarod, because I've been in races where when you're in a hard spot and there's no one there to lift you up, like you want to scratch, you want to throw in the towel, you want to go home. I think you might have been, I don't know if you were in the race or if you were handling, but the Copper Basin in 2018.
I was in that one. Yeah.
Yeah. We had to do a 70-something mile run from Sourdough to Mendelton Lodge. Then it was Mendelton Lodge before it burned down.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I left Sourdough, and it was like, I forget what it was, 0 or 10 below or something. And within like 5 miles, it had warmed up to 35 above, and it was just dumping snow. and just like wet, heavy snow, and you're just going like 5.5 miles an hour. And I was going to do that in one shot to stay competitive. I packed enough gear to do it one shot. And, 7 hours in, you're like barely halfway. And I ended up just like having to pull over in camp because my leaders were getting a little bit heady and needed to get rehydrated. I pulled over and I sat on my bucket for about an hour and a half and let the dogs rest and gave them a meal, and then kept going. And I was like, this is it. I'm done. I'm scratching in Mendeltna. It's over. Like, this is not fun. It's probably one of the least fun I was having in a race ever. And I got to Mendeltna and I was like, this is it. I'm good. I'm going home. And it was my brother, and then you probably remember this, or you might remember this when I say it, but my brother had brought his father-in-law along to handle for me. They're from Pennsylvania and Michigan. And I pulled into the checkpoint and they're like, "Oh yeah, good job. You're what a man, what an Alaskan beast. And what an awesome run. Like, everybody's dogs look so tired. You look so good coming in." I'm like, "Are you serious? Like, now I got to keep going." So I remember getting the dogs bedded down and just stumbling around like half drunk, looking like I was half drunk. And my brother literally like holding my arm, walking me to the cabin to like tuck me into bed so I can get a nap. And then I went and finished it. I mean, it wasn't a great finish, but it was, you get through. But anyway, you have people like that at checkpoints. They can really make or break
difference.
Your race. So yeah.
That's amazing. And that's the thing. It doesn't, in my head, I'm thinking like, I need to impart some insane wisdom and knowledge. It's like, no, just good job. And you're like, oh, like, thanks. I said that to a couple of mushers and they were like, you mean it? And I was like, yeah, you're doing great.
Well, that's the second thing I was going to say. So I showed up in Finger Lake and Iditarod. I think I told you this already out of the race, but the first few days of Iditarod that was the hardest part for me. Like, I didn't get hardly any sleep. I got to Finger Lake and I was already feeling like I was getting behind. And I was running kind of around like Calvin and Laura and I think Isaac and a couple other people. And I left Squentna like before them, and they left after me and they caught up to me and passed me, and they got there like 20 minutes before me. I'm like, my speed is garbage. Like, I'm 120 miles in and I'm already getting behind. And I think I said something like that to you, like I'm going to get too far behind. And you're like, "Dude, you're 120 miles into the race. Don't tell me you're going to have to scratch already. Like, don't give me that load of crap." I think that's the first I've really met you face to face in person besides our quick Instagram chat. So, but it worked.
That's funny. Yeah. That's too good. That's good. I do remember us talking and yeah, there was, Finger Lake, that run for whatever reason, people or some of the folks were, on the struggle bus mentally at that juncture. And obviously Dallas had his thing and the moose or whatever, but
not much sleep. And then those giant, sugar holes is what it was, just over and over again. You're going up and then bam and up and bam, like just the length of a snow machine. You're on top of the snow, then you drop in just over and over again. So
that checks. Yeah, it seems like the first third was like pretty much every run was like really, really difficult, because it should be easy enough to Squentna. That's a party run, and then, Finger Lake is not historically a difficult run from Squentna to Finger Lake, but the conditions were tough. And then,
I think for me, I stuck to my plan past Yentna. I went through Yentna, grabbed some straw, and then I was like, and then I'm going to take another 4 or 5 hour break in Squentna. But then I got to Squentna in like 2.5 hours. And so I didn't know what to do then. Like, do I keep going or do I just stop? So I stopped in Squentna and I had some females in heat and a couple of dogs that were rowdy, like wanting to fight. So I literally slept after a 2.5 hour run, like less than 100 miles into the race. I had to sleep by my sled. So just to monitor any shenanigans that might be happening in the team. So I really didn't have much sleep by getting into Finger Lake and even beyond that.
How long was your Squentna rest?
I forget what it was. I probably
Well, it's like
around
4.5.
I think I fell asleep, or I just it was like the middle of the night, so I was like probably 4 or 5 hours, too long.
nice. Hey, it's at that point in the race, and it is your goal is to finish and maybe be competitive, but yeah,
I think I was one of the last ones out of that checkpoint.
nice.
Besides, like I think, like I said, I think Calvin passed me pretty quick out of Squentna, and then anyway, Laura passed me later on, closer to Finger Lake. But yeah, I was one of the last 3 or 4 out of there.
Yep. Nice. That's crazy, man. So then, yeah, of course, you got the steps, which I guess weren't, people. I don't know. How did you find those to be? Like, I feel like they're kind of an underwhelming but famous because they have like people set up the camera, the trail crew right next to, and they've caught all these wipeouts on camera, and you had a musher break their finger there recently a couple years ago, and but it's not like my experience with the steps wasn't like that crazy. Well, I don't know.
Oh, there was a lot of snow. There was lots of snow, and after you run the Quest 300, I think that it was pretty manageable. Yeah, with lots of snow and yeah, and a little bit of experience on the sled. It was very manageable.
That was something I noted that I remember you saying as well out there was like all the tricky parts, like all the technical trails, the trick, whether it's the Dalzell Gorge or that river outside of Roan, the Post River, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And those notorious like sled breaking sections of trail were like, probably challenging for you, but like when you just compare to like a completely like windswept Rosebud or so what you've seen out there on the Quest Trail, you seemed like you were just ready for it.
Yeah,
whatever
for sure.
Iditarod had.
Yeah, the Quest 300 on the Alaska side, it does not. I mean, people talk about how tough it is. You cannot overstate how challenging that race is. that run up, whether you go up it or down it, between like two rivers and 101, where you go up over Rosebud, like that valley, I forget what it is, like the North Fork of the Chino or something like that. The way you go in and out of those little side valleys with the glaciers on them, the years that those glaciers are big, it's treacherous. And the climb up Rosebud, especially if you don't have like perfect leaders, can be also really hard. But you're side hilling going downhill, side hilling across glaciers with trees at the bottom of the glacier. And so, yeah, the stuff on the Iditarod was much more fun, more pleasant.
Nice.
Hey, so earlier you mentioned your dogs were being heady. I'm curious, like, what does that look like? What is that like? What do you see in the dogs to be like, oh, they're getting heady?
Good question.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So every dog, I would say it's a little bit different from dog to dog, but generally they're a dog that never looks back at you is starting to look back at you. A dog whose ears are always flat against its head are now pricked straight up. And then the tug line in both scenarios, their tug line isn't perfectly tight. And sometimes you see that when they're getting ready to go to the bathroom or when they're getting ready to navigate a tricky part of the trail. But if they're doing that over and over again for no reason in hard conditions, you start to wonder, do they have an injury, or are they just starting to think about like starting to question life? Like this year when I was leaving Ruby, I probably shouldn't even tell this story, but I'll just tell it anyway. It's not a big deal, but my best leader, she sat down a couple times leaving Ruby. And that's the worst case. I mean, that's like when they're, and I don't know what it was in that case, because she was fine. Like physically, she was fine. I think she was just like, dude, we've been going for 400 or 500 miles and we just took an 8-hour break. What are we doing here? And I had her in single lead at that time because I had to drop my other good leader. But yeah, she sat down and then the team accordioned. And I'm down. Did you go to Ruby, Sean?
No, I mean, I did as a musher, but not this year.
So Ruby, you're kind of up by the roundhouse and you're going downhill to get out of town on the roads. So you stop the sled with 13 dogs and walk up there, straighten her out. and then get going again downhill. So you have to downhill on the icy road. She sat down again. And then, so this, after the second time, I took another leader and put her up there with her, and then put a couple different swing dogs in. And then we got out of there just fine. She just needed a buddy.
Oh,
Nice. Yeah, you're solo lead with her.
Yeah.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah. So that's like the most extreme case, Brendan, to answer your question.
that's interesting. And so I guess like we haven't really talked too much about this, but like are the dogs like constantly looking back at you? Like when you're talking to one of the dogs, like, do they like, I don't know, like, how do you know they're hearing you? How do you know like selective hearing versus like, oh, all right, the dog knows the command, like the dog knows what to do next? I don't know. We haven't talked too much about like the communication back and forth between musher and dog. So I'm kind of just like interested a little bit about this topic.
Yeah. I don't say a whole lot to them. But if I get bored, or if it's been like, if it's getting kind of monotonous and maybe they're kind of slowing down a little bit. I guess to answer your first question, no, they don't look back at me very often. If they look back at me, it's because, like I said, they're getting ready to poop. They're trying to navigate something. Their partner's being annoying to them. You know, something's going on, or maybe they have a sore foot or a sore shoulder. Something's going on if they're looking back at me. Usually they're tight, head down, tight tug. But yeah, if they start to slow down, I might like call out their names individually. That's one thing I like to do sometimes when they're bored, is like call each one of their name and tell them good dog, as we're, if we're 60 miles into a 77-mile run going to Nome, you just call out each one of their names and in a happy voice and tell them what a good job they're doing. And they know their names. So they perk up. Not every one of them, but they perk up, and some of them will look back.
Nice. Okay.
It's subtle, man. It's like whenever you're talking to your dogs, like when I was a little less experienced, and I'm still really, only done it for 5 years or whatever. But, when you talk to them, they're not like, I guess it depends on the dog, but they're really not like super like, oh, you said my name, coach? Cool. Like, it's kind of like a real subtle, like body language change of depending on the dog. And they're like, oh, thanks. Like, appreciate you saying that, but it's like subtle,
Yep. Nice. So I didn't want to we were kind of talking about the Iditarod and your run there, but I just wanted to chime in because Sean was asking some great back to back questions.
I wanted you to chime in too. I think Ben did too. So thank you. I guess to put so the dog that was leaving Ruby that sat down, she finished Iditarod in lead. So
I wanted to
a great
ask.
dog.
Okay.
She was just having a moment.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, and there's like, it's important. You got to recognize like when it's having a moment like that, or if it's like a, serious, like more serious moment. And that's, maybe just like she's just got a couple questions that Ben needs to answer, and right. I've seen dogs that like it's just it can be a boredom thing. Like not like, like, especially now you're going on like the Yukon River, and that, is the epitome of boredom. I don't know if she's never been on the river, but the boredom aspect of things, like when I would run the same run 3 or 4 times in a row in training, and you get on the third time and they're like, dude, like, we're going up the same hill. And I'm like, yeah, like, but y'all are like, this is January, you're in like peak condition, you're fine, and they're like, but we like, it'd be kind of cool if we like went somewhere, you know what I mean? And so you gotta have to have that dialogue with them. But yeah, go ahead. What?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like we were kind of leading up to like your 24 in Takatna. I didn't know if there was anything like, were you originally planning for a 24 in Takatna, or was there anything that kind of, was that a plan B or anything?
So I set up, Takatna was my first choice. I set up for Nikolai, I set up for McGrath, and I set up for Takatna. I had, Nikolai, I told my son, like, as I was packing drop bags, or at some point between then and the race, that if I stopped in Nikolai, I was going to be having problems. Or he would be able to tell by my stop in Nikolai for a 24 that I was having some issues. And if I stopped in McGrath, I was doing okay, but it wasn't my first choice. But I really was hoping to get to Takatna. So when I left Nikolai, I had my fingers crossed to make that push the whole way to Takatna. I think it ended up being about a 66-mile run. And I got it coming into McGrath. I was like, should I stop? Should I go? We've been running for a long time. And I suddenly had my cell phone like in my chest pocket. And suddenly I hear ding, ding, ding. So my cell phone had picked up service on the way into McGrath. And so I pulled it out. And I was like, I got to call my wife. Like I haven't talked to her in a while. So I call her and we're talking about it where she's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to get to Takatna. She's like, well, do what you want to do. You only got one shot at this, or you only got one shot right now. So, do what you want to do. And I was like, well, Zeus looks like his shoulder's a little sore. And now Irma's looking a little tired. And she's like, well, do whatever you want. So I pulled into McGrath and I was like, all right, I'm going to go for it. So I rummaged through my bags in McGrath and got a couple snacks and put a few things into my return bag so that I could get it back later. Yeah, and then leaving McGrath to Takatna, there was kind of a big hill right in the middle, which was surprising and a little bit disappointing. I thought I was just going to be on the river the whole time again. So I was second guessing that a little bit, but was really happy to get to Takatna. The best part about getting to Takatna was that I caught up to the front of the pack, for a few hours at least. So getting to see like Ryan and Travis and Aaron and Jesse Royer and some of those people was just, as a musher, as any musher, you want to kind of see what other people are doing. You want to see what the best of the best are doing and what their dogs look like right now, what they look like right now. In this race, not necessarily to be competitive with them, but just out of curiosity and maybe to learn something. So I was super happy. And the pie, everybody talks about the pie in Takatna. I literally ate one of every kind of pie that they had in Takatna, which ended up being about 6 pieces.
Dang. Are these all like
good numbers right there?
Are these all sweet pies, or are there like meat pies, or is it all like?
No, they were all sweet. There was all desserts, pies, fruit pies, berry pies. Yeah.
Okay. No peanut butter pie.
No, there was no peanut butter pie.
Oh man,
Sure, they were whipping out like when I was there, and I certainly was there during your 24. It was they made like a gigantic like cartoon high level of pancakes.
Yeah,
just like this huge stack that would be, and they were like almost an inch thick, and they were simple, but they're just hot and delicious.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. People were, they just come in and they like just crank out a breakfast, crank out a dinner, and maybe even a lunch. And, and if you want to time, you're waking up from the nap to be there when it's hot, but it was tight quarters, but it was, good food there. I still, and so,
oh, go ahead.
No. Add to your story.
Oh, I was just going to say the other great thing about Takatna was that as all those front runners moved out, a bed opened up. So I got a bed for, I think, a bed for the second time in the race. And that was pretty sweet.
Nice.
So take us through, like, where are you at mentally at this point? I mean, Takatna was your goal for 24. So I'm sure, like, coming into Takatna, you're probably happy that you've made that. Where are you at in the sleep deprivation? Like, just where are you at mentally?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit coming into Takatna. They put me in a parking spot that was really punchy. I could tell when I was falling through the whole, like breaking through the hard pack and falling in up to my waist. When I did that a few times, I could feel my head kind of get, I checking in with myself. Like I'm a little bit grumpy right now. This is kind of annoying me more than it should. But I was happy to be there and, happy that I made the made the push. Let's see. Yeah, I think by that point we were in a rhythm. Like we were doing pretty good. Rainy Pass was a reset for me. I'll step back a little bit on the trail. Rainy Pass, I was in a bad spot. Katie Joe walked up to me maybe an hour and a half after I'd been there to try to do an interview, and I was like, I'm Katie, I don't think, and I'm always happy to do whatever, talk to people or do an interview for her, but I was like, Katie Joe, I don't think I could do this right now. My head's not in a good spot, and I'm like a zombie. I haven't slept since the beginning of the race. But I went up to the sleeping quarters for the mushers, and Rainy Pass was phenomenal. They had this like bunkhouse that was like 85 degrees inside, and flannel sheets and a flannel pillow. That was a total reset for me. After that, I got into a pretty good rhythm, and I was feeling pretty good. So by Takatna, yeah, we were grooving.
And what, like that reset? So I'm looking here at your like little sheet. 6 hour 20 rest time. How much of that was actually sleeping though? About like 3 hours in Rainy Pass.
That was in Rainy Pass, probably 2.5 or 3 hours.
It's crazy how just that little amount of sleep can like be you said that was a reset. It was only 2.5 to 3 hours.
It was tough. Yeah, it is. It does. It changes your, and you later on in the race, I'm looking forward to that. I know after 2 hours, I'm good again. Like I'm good. I might be grumpy. I might be tired, but 2 hours, I'm good. So that was kind of where I after Takatna, I got into a pretty good rhythm. I did take a few longer stops right after my 24, but I got into a pretty good rhythm of, a 6 hour break was 2 hours of chores, and then a 2 hour nap, and then 2 more hours of chores, and then pull out. Sometimes that second 2 hours of chores turned into, maybe the nap went to 2.5 or 3 hours, and the chores turned into 2.5. Some of those stops were a little, when I looked back at the times, I was like, oh God, how was I there for 7.5 hours? But
yeah. So when you left from Takatna to Ruby, did you camp between Ophir and Cripple, stopped at Cripple? Did you camp before Ruby as well? Or did you run that straight?
Oh yeah. So let's see. I left Takatna. I went through Ophir, which I was bummed about because Ophir got the checkpoint award this year. So in hindsight, I was like, oh, maybe I should have stopped at Ophir because it sounded like it was a really great checkpoint. But it didn't work out for my schedule because it was only like 2.5 hours out of my 24. So I ran the whole way to Carlson's Creek cabin. I think that's what it's called, or Carlson Crossing. There's a cabin halfway between Ophir and Cripple. So I stopped there. Let's see. Yeah, I stopped there for 6 hours, and I ended up having to stay a little longer because I had some dogs that had some really cramped shoulders. 2 dogs with really cramped up shoulders. And one with a sore wrist. So I came out to put booties on and recognized that and had to kind of take care of those and go back and take another. I massaged the 2 that were sore and wrapped the wrist, went back in, took another hour nap, and then went back out, and they were all good to go again. And then
it's insane. It's so cool how robust the dogs are. They have these sorenesses, and literally, like, if you just can know what you're doing, know how to work it out, and give them not literally an hour, like, or maybe it was an hour and a half, whatever. And then they're just like, yeah, I felt a lot better. Thanks, coach.
Well, yeah. And one of those dogs I thought I was going to have to carry, and I didn't. One of them I was like probably going to drop them in the Cripple. And, but no, yeah, if you can do a lot in a couple hours with those tight shoulders, as long as they're not, strained muscles, as long as they're just cramps, you can do a lot with them. Same with the wrists.
Hey, speaking of carrying, I'm curious, was that part of your strategy? Do you carry dogs? Do you have like I don't know, the setup, but I know that some of the mushers are, hauling dogs. Is that something that you're pro or anti, or any thoughts there?
I'm not that interested in it. I'm usually grumbling if I have to carry a dog.
Okay.
I did pull a little, you got to be ready to do it, right? You have to be prepared to do it. So I pulled a little, like otter sled, a little jet sled, so I could put straw in, because there's some of these runs where you got to do a camp out halfway in between. Your sled's pretty packed, and so if you do have to carry a dog, you need somewhere to put gear. So I brought that jet sled so I could put a bale of straw and some gear into it if I had to carry a dog. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, dude, I'm like some of them, the guys that carry dogs, firstly, I think it's mostly like a competitive, and compared the teams that are trying to top 10 it, are usually the ones messing with that. But, they train their dogs to do it, and they, have these like nice, like they're like a dog box almost, some of these guys have, where you're like opening like the side of the sled bag, Brendan, and they like just literally like take a dog, walk him over, put him in, close the thing, and it's like done. That's like in like 15 seconds.
Yeah, it's like an airline. It's like an airline kennel closure. Like, okay, it's almost that secure.
Wow.
And so that like, but then like I've never had a setup like that, and it's like I'm always like I got to rearrange like my entire bag. The dogs like the dogs never practiced like being in the sled. And so they're reluctant, and they're usually probably got plenty of energy, but they have some soreness that I don't like that I'm seeing. And you're putting them in there, and they're like, I can go. And I'm like, no, like, just take a rest, please. And they're like, no. And then that's a whole thing. And that waste. I remember in the Copper Basin 2018, 2018, like I spent like 45 minutes trying to get Thunder in the damn bag. And he and it was like that one short run that I remember, like Alex, my handler and homie, was like, dude, this 44-mile run, like, don't think it's just going to go like super easy because you just crushed a 70 or whatever. And I was like, okay, and then I'm in there like trying to get Thunder in the bag, and he's got like a clear wrist problem. And I'm like, and he's just battling me. And I'm like, God. So yeah, it's crazy how, for some people, putting a dog in the bag is just not a big deal. And then for some people and some dogs, because it's not just the person, it's their sled setup, and it's the dog's experience and the level of tired, and it's just like a complete chore, like the last thing you want to deal with.
Oh, I'm 100% with you, Sean. They're not interested in riding, and I'm not interested in carrying. But if you have to, you have to. You got to figure out a way to make it work. Now that we're talking about it, I only had to carry a dog like the last 10 miles into safety. I had a dog that was getting a little sore. I couldn't exactly tell what was wrong. I think she might have had some harness rub or some soreness in her pec muscle. That's the only time I had to carry a dog in the whole race. That's pretty lucky.
Damn.
Wow. And I had one more question about hauling. So you really only see that in the long distance races? You don't see that like in the mid distances and such, or
you might
depend. Does it depend on, some mushers are just kind of, that's their strategy regardless of the race.
I mean, some people are, this year in the Iditarod, there was, dude, I think like Jessie Royer was saying something about how she just like carried a dog for like the whole run because the dog had some minor issue that it required, 10 or 12 hours of just not running, and just like carried the dog like the whole way. And then she ran the dog like out of the checkpoint, and then it was like the problem was still there, and put the dog back in the bag, and then went to it's some story like that, and just ended up dropping the dog. So you just have like these extra 60 pounds, that you're like,
if you have 15 other dogs pulling it and the trail's good, it's like it's no big deal.
Right. That is true. And but like, the Cusco, Brendan, like you got 100-mile runs, and if you have a dog that's cooperative and maybe like a veteran 8-year-old dog, and you can just like put them in the bag for the first third of the race or something, absolutely. So yeah, people will do that, but I think it's way more common in the long distance, but it's certainly happening in the mid distance.
Okay. Sorry to go down that rabbit hole. I was just curious. I just wanted to.
That's why we want to go down these little branches of the tree,
We'll eventually wrap up the the Iditarod story too, but just had to you had to take a little right hand turn real quick,
So the Yukon River is to me like this anomaly because like on paper the Yukon River should be like super chill and like zero technical riding for the musher, like. But it was like really hard for everybody, I think. And I think it was cold, this year on the river and windy for some of the people in the back of the pack. I remember hearing like when I floated the Colorado River and I think it was last year. And those guys that are river rats, they're always like, I was like, yeah, when it's windy upstream, that's it's all kind of a bummer. I was telling them some floating out hunt trip I did, and where it was nuking snow and blowing 20 upriver, and we're floating down the river at like 2 miles an hour. And a 20-mile float should take you a few hours. It was like a full day of just shivering, and I was like colder than I was in the Iditarod. And then, so they're talking for like, oh, they refer to the wind as dub. For W representing wind. They'd be like, no, they're all like kind of broy, and they're like, yeah, dude, nothing's worse than that upstream dub, total L. and so I was just thinking of that when everyone's like, yeah, it was ambient, like 45 below and blowing 15 or 20 miles an hour upstream. So I'm talking about the Yukon River for you, Ben.
Yeah, there was some wind. It was all pretty manageable. Going into Galena. I got pretty cold because of the upstream dub. But other than that, it was pretty. It was like either a side wind or it was I don't know. It was pretty manageable. Like going into Galena, I think I was going. It was. Maybe I got into Galena early in the morning, like right as the sun was coming up. So it was probably that like 40 below with 15-mile-an-hour wind. The wind wasn't horrendous then, but it was enough to make that 40 below feel really cold. And I had changed up. I wasn't wearing my Yukon Quest gear. I completely changed my get up for the Iditarod at the recommendation of a couple of veterans. I didn't have like my 40 below apocalypse parka and bibs. I had more layers instead of the big heavy stuff. So I did get a little bit cold going into Galena, and then leaving Galena, it was super windy leaving Galena, but it was more like it was warm. It was daytime. So it kind of made the dogs perky, and it was fun. Instead of just being the monotonous slog down the Yukon, it was like jihawing back and forth to find the trail, to get around the wind drifts. So yeah, it was pretty fun. Yeah, pretty fun from Galena to Nulato. Nulato was kind of the energy in Nulato was pretty. You guys have talked about this in other podcasts, but you could feel it as soon as you got in there. Like, found out right away about some bad news about Isaac, and then Deke walked over, and I'm like, I caught up to Deke. What are you doing here, Deke? And he was scratching, and you could just kind of feel the energy was low in Nulato. But I mean, personally, I didn't. I had a nice rest in the gym and did my thing there, and then leaving Nulato. It was similar. It was nighttime now, but it was like pretty good for the first, I forget, 10 miles or so, and then it got super windy. So I had two less experienced leaders up there, but it was fun to see them sort of work together, and they had to decide if they were going to bust through the snowdrift or if they were going to go to the left of it and then come back onto the hard pack trail. So they're like instead of going over it, they would try to go like around it. And sometimes that worked, and sometimes they'd try to go around it and then keep going around it and then keep going around it, and they'd end up so far off to the left that they'd be off the hard pack and into the deep snow, kind of wallowing. But it made for an entertaining run. And I've talked to another musher. I won't name names because this might be a little bit sound a little bit crazy. I think it was between Nulato and Caltag though. It was the middle of the night. I'm hoping Sean, once I say this, you're going to say, oh yeah, somebody else has told me about this. I look up, occasionally I'll pop my headlamp off so I can look at the northern lights or see if the stars are out. So I pop my headlamp off and I look up, and like going completely horizontal across the sky is this like glowing orange thing that's going like perfectly horizontal across the sky. It looked way too low to be a meteor. You're looking at me like no one said this to you before yet. How'd they show?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I like it. Keep it going, Brandon.
Keep it going, baby.
dude.
I'm like,
seriously, man.
I'm like, what is that? So I turn my headlamp back on and I just like ignore it for a minute. I'm like, I turn it back because when it's on, I can't see. So I'm like, I got to see what that. So I pop it back off and it's still going. It's still going across the sky. Like, it looked like orange marker lights, like like on your trailer, but it's big and glowing. It's not like blinking like an airplane doesn't have blinker lights or headlights or, but it was flying like at the height that maybe a small airplane would fly.
At night.
At night. Yeah. So maybe it's a meteor. Maybe it's a UFO. Maybe I was just losing my mind, hallucinating. But I have corroborated the story with another musher. So he saw it. He thought it was in a different part of the trail, so that we didn't quite connect there on where we both saw it. But there was something there between Nulato and Caltag in my mind. I wish I would have pulled my phone out and got a video of it. But anyway, maybe UFOs do exist. I don't know.
Hey, that's where we're going.
I mean, there's definitely
it.
Unidentified flying objects. Like that's just a fact,
Sure.
Where are they from? We don't know. Is it, maybe that was just, some
Chinese balloon, maybe?
Yeah, there we go.
I'm over here, Ben. I'm over here. I'm like, all right, who did you leave around from Nulato to Caltag? Who do we need to ask?
So the other mushers said that they thought they saw it between Cripple and Ruby. Oh, you asked me if I camped out between Cripple and Ruby, Sean. I did. I camped out halfway. It was really cold, really frosty, but yeah. But we're on the Yukon now. So anyway, yeah, I got into Caltag. Caltag was amazing. I mean, bluebird skies. It was windy and cold, similar to going into Galena. Caltag was cold, and you can see the lights of the city forever. But eventually, you get there, and but by that time, it was like me and Jeff Reed and Lauro and I forget Laura Kittleson, and I think that was the four of us were kind of traveling together. Me and Jeff and Laura would kind of leave around the same time, and then Laura would leave a little bit later and pass us all.
Her team
get more sleep.
She's probably sleeping like 7 hours a day, like 6 hours.
Oh
a day.
yeah. Yeah.
And her team was like, every time I saw them, they were just acting a fool. Like they at their campouts, just like humping. Yeah. She had like 4 or 5 females in heat or something. Like maybe it was 3, but it was at least 3 females in heat. And she just she was just smiling the whole time, it seemed. Yeah. I'm sure she had to have had some lows out there, but I mean, also maybe not, because you sleep. That sleep takes care of a lot of the emotional aspect of things,
Oh yeah. I think that was the last time that she left before me and passed me. And then I don't think I ever saw her again after that. So
every time she was in an interview or on a video, she was like, I'm like, man, this girl for a rookie is like she's like so happy go lucky. I'm like looking at her, like looking for signs of weakness. I'm like, she just seems so I guess, that sleep was very helpful.
Well, one thing I'll say about both her and Calvin, I think, traveled quite a bit together. And one thing I'll say about those two, just to give them kudos, is, man, they were unbelievably efficient. They looked incredibly professional, like with the way they interacted with their dogs, the way they, it was like they were mini Mitch and mini Dallas out there, like being super efficient and taking care of those dogs so well. And then, I go into the cabin and they'd both be like taking a nap. It wasn't like they were young kids kind of goofing around out there to like have a good time. Like they were all business, but they were having fun too. It was really impressive to see both her and Calvin out there just doing such a fantastic job, just crushing it. So I thought that was cool to see.
Yeah, that was evident that those dogs were super prepared, and so were they for being the two youngest mushers in the Iditarod. Calvin being the youngest, and Lara right there behind him. But
yeah,
so then you have Caltech to Unalakleet. You stopped at Old Woman.
Yep.
And was it everything you ever dreamed of?
It wasn't 60 below like some other folks had. It was pretty nice. Yeah. Pretty uneventful. It was just really beautiful. Like I did that run to Old Woman in the day. Like I got to Old Woman right at sunset. So that was cool. And then, we camped in that cabin with a couple of the bikers.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you had run into Hunter there, but I guess he was already gone by that point.
Yeah, they were already long gone.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's where I caught up to Sevi, because after that, me and Sevi were kind of traveling together a little bit more. Then got into Unalakleet and was really surprised to see that Aaron had scratched there. That was a bummer for me. He's been a mentor for me. I got my first couple dogs from him, so he's been. And I don't think he's ever scratched before. So I was like, that's not right. That can't be right.
Huh. Yeah, I'm real curious about that. I guess he's seen the coast too before. It's like if he misses it, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
He's seen it once or twice.
Yeah. And I had 4 pizzas waiting there for me. So I was like, what am I going to do with 4 pizzas? Like, I'm hungry, but I'm not hungry.
Yeah, it was funny. The pizzas and then like the mushergrams. It was funny because like I would be at the checkpoints and you'd see like the pile of mushergrams for every musher there. And Brendan and I have been advertising doing the mushergram thing. I think it's really cool when it's like a homie or a family and especially not knowing about him. For me, I didn't know that they were even a thing. So that was perfect for me. But it was funny to see like some of them that'd be like sending it to like Lara or something. And I'd like read like the top one. It's like, I hope you can win this year. I'm like second grade Oklahoma, I'm like, all right, maybe they're not all, but it's just kind of like the sentiment's nice. But like for me, I was like reading them like that's exactly what I needed. Like it was almost like having a person there to encourage you. Whereas like when I handed them out in White Mountain, like all the mushers were like, yeah, I don't really want it. I'm like, oh, it was just me that liked them, I guess. Okay.
I took them in White Mountain. I got one from my hometown in White Mountain.
Nice.
That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the random ones are sweet and we appreciate it. Keep doing it, is like, but yeah, of course, when it's someone that or a place, so then, and then you had like the coast, like from my perspective being in the VIP plane rides and stuff, but like Shaktoolik, I got to be there for maybe 24 hours, 36 hours. And then I was in White Mountain for like 2 or 3 lifetimes. And, and no, but like the weather was just like impeccable from, visibility wise. It was blue for like 5 straight days. And there was wind on the coast. I know people battled it. But it seems like as to how bad the coast could be any year, it was pretty fair. But yeah, how was your coast?
Well, I came down out of the Blueberry Hills onto the coast of Shaktoolik, and it was intimidating. Like there was a northeast wind blowing probably 35 miles an hour. So it's kind of coming at you. Yeah, it's the
wind a little bit. The upstream.
So, and I didn't realize how far it was going to be up this. I don't know if that's a spit. You call that a spit?
I think it is a spit.
Like 15 miles up the spit.
15? I thought it was 10. Okay. Damn.
It seemed like it took forever. Yeah. And I was like, oh, the coast is here. Like shit just got real. And it didn't really affect the dogs. I think if anything, the dogs were just like, hey, it's keeping us cool down. And they were kind of perky and excited. But I was like, this could get really cold. This could blow us all around the ice. So when we got into Shaktoolik, So Sevi and I made a plan. He got to Shaktoolik before I did, and he was gonna wait for me, which I really appreciated his offer to do that, because he didn't want to cross, and I didn't want to cross alone. So he waited for me in Shaktoolik, and then, and I'm waiting, with that 35-mile-an-hour wind, and then I'm thinking it's going to be, 35, 40 below at night again. And we're going to be crossing starting at 3 a.m. So I'm thinking this is going to be, so we put on every last bit of clothing that we had. I mean, I didn't have a single piece of long underwear, net gaiter, sock left in my sled. It was all on my body. And we pulled out of Shaktoolik. He waited for me, and then I kind of goofed around. I felt bad because I was taking forever. And then we both decided that we wanted to take a wet snack. So we went back in and made a wet snack and brought that back out and packed it. And I'm just pouring sweat by that point. And I'm like, oh, that's great. It'd be 35 below with a 35-mile-an-hour headwind, and I'm pouring sweat. This is fantastic. So we pull out of Shaktoolik, and it's like, oh, there's no wind. This is surely once we get past the spit, like once we get up to the shelter cabin, it'll be blowing again. So we're waiting, we're just going, and he was having some trouble with leaders and whatever. So after about an hour, I think it was about an hour and a half, we get up to the shelter cabin. I gave my wet snack. I pulled out ahead of him a little bit, and I took the lead, and it wasn't windy. And so that whole run across not a breath of wind. Not a breath of wind. And there was snow like completely covering the ice. So it turned out to be just a phenomenal run. And I got to watch the sunrise coming into Koyuk. It was fantastic. And that was most of the runs up the coast for me then. Leaving Koyuk was a little windy, but gorgeous bluebird skies. That whole Koyuk checkpoint was so nice. And then going into Elam, I was surprised. Elam, I don't know what's going on in Elam. There's some kind of industry there. It seemed a lot bigger than I expected. Anyway, Elam was efficient, nice. There was I caught up to Sean Williams in Koyuk too. I can't remember if I left before him or if we left. I can't remember. He left a few hours before me. That's right, because I didn't actually pass him until Golovin. But yeah, we got to Elam, and then where does it go after Elam? Or is Golovin on the way into Elam? No, Elam, and then
Golovin's on the way to White Mountain.
Yeah. So Elam was good, and then Golovin, I ran into Sean. There's like this big figure in the dark walks up beside me as I pull into town. The dogs are thinking that it's a checkpoint, and I'm like, we got to get through here. We can't stop. And then he comes like this shadow in the dark. He's like, dude, do you have any kibble or do you have any food? I'm kind of shut down here. I'm like, yeah, man, I'll give you, I got some food. I gave him some kibble and then was on my way. But that snow leaving Golovin, I mean, I can understand maybe why his dogs were having problems leaving. Cause when I left Golovin, that snow was so abrasive, like sandpaper on your runners. We pulled out on the sea ice of Golovin, and we were going like 5.5 miles an hour. And you're like thinking, okay, is my runner plastic like gone? Am I running like aluminum on ice? But it's just that abrasive. And the dogs were looking back at me like we talked about earlier, like, what are we doing, man? Why are we going so slow? Eventually they settle into that new pace. But I could see if your dogs aren't feeling good, then you pull out onto that sandpaper snow, that they wouldn't want to keep going.
I don't know if you've gotten a chance to listen to his episode. It was lengthy, but
I'm still getting through it. I'm like 15 minutes in.
Nice. Yeah. He described like, because the obvious thing where I'm thinking is like, yeah, like be the lead dog. You just walk in front of your team, and it's like it'd be like a day long walk, sure, to get to White Mountain if it came to that. And he said like every time he'd do that, like the dogs would catch up to him. So like he couldn't like keep up with their pace because he had like most of his team was like pulling good. And then like no one wanted to lead, so that the leaders would just be bunching back, So that was and I was like, man, I was like trying to think of, some brilliant solution. I was like, wait a second, like Sean's not a spring chicken dude. That guy's been doing this for a long time and he knows like what he's doing. Like I'm sure he's tried like anything that anyone's ever thought about, And but yeah, that's it. I didn't know that about the trail outside of Galvin. So
it was not a fast trail. Yeah, I don't know what you do in that situation. Maybe put some rope around your runners so that they can't go fast enough to pass you. I don't know. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah. That's I would be in a terrible place mentally. I'd say, it's tough. But it was cool to hear Sean tell it from his perspective, and it was very heartfelt.
And he does mention getting some kibble from me too.
Yeah, okay. He did say that.
I was more than willing to. I've been in that situation before, so I'm more than willing to help a guy in need.
Nice. Yeah. So then, you got your 8 hours in White Mountain.
Yep.
And the 8 hour rest, Brendan, like, you do like a 4 to 6 hour rest, and like, it's like the difference between 2 to 3 hours is massive. Like that third hour is huge. And then the fourth, from a 3 hour rest to a 4 hour rest, like again, huge difference in like like what your team's getting. And then you get all the way to like your 6 hours of rest and you add a 7th hour. And it's like, all right, that barely helped.
No,
no, like it doesn't, it's not necessarily detrimental, but like you get the 8 hours and the dog, it's like, I don't know if you've ever done like a sleep deprivation kind of thing where like fishing for me, we would be sleeping 3 to 4 hours at a time, and I'd wake up and my body wasn't comprehending the agony it was in. And then same with mushing, like you take these shorter rests and you wake up and you're like, you feel like you look like shit, but like if you slept for 10 hours, like you'd feel even worse probably, And so like with the dogs, I think there's an element of like, you take an 8 hour rest and they're like, oh yeah, we did just run 900 miles, didn't we? So, you see teams slow to leave White Mountain. And I don't remember your departure, but how was your final run?
Yeah, we ripped right out of there. I was pretty happy with them. We except for Ruby, after we were pretty good getting out of checkpoints.
Nice.
Yeah, they rip out of there, and then 100 yards later, they just all start pooping, and then you. But no, the Topcock Hills were fantastic. Again, I had like bluebird skies. We went down this one stretch.
Daytime? Was it daytime or nighttime?
It was daytime. Yeah. So I got over the last Topcock as the sun was setting. So that was fun. I got some good pictures of that. It was beautiful. There's one little like alley. Maybe we were on a slough or a river or something, but there's willows on either side of the trail. And there must have been like 800 ptarmigan just lined up in the willows. It was crazy. Like
800.
I mean, they were for like probably a mile and a half.
Insane.
Like it was insane. The dogs were so excited.
That's awesome.
It was right before we climbed the first Topcock.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
We did. I think we talked about the. You were saying somebody told you there was 8 Topcocks, and you thought maybe there was more like 15.
Yeah, someone told me 7 was the number.
I totally
7 big ones.
I don't know what counts as a Topcock.
Yeah. that was Tom Nomeyer. He was like, dude, there's 7 hills. You got this, man. And I was like, all right, cool. 7. And I got like, I was like, got the 7. And I was like, I might be at 6, but all right, maybe the next one's a 7. And it was like, we were halfway, maybe, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm just like tripping here. I'm curious. And flying over them, I was like, yeah, there's good little climbs.
There's way more than 7. There's no way there's
okay.
Okay, right. I got your back on that one.
Can confirm. All right, cool.
Yeah. But no, it seemed like they got bigger. Like the farther along, it seemed like the last 2 were the biggest. And then I was like trying to figure out where Bridget and Gerhardt, is that his name? Got stuck. I think after talking to some people at the end of the race, I think I figured out what area they were in. And then the blowhole, I guess the blowhole is right when you get to the bottom of the last, like on the coast, the bottom of the last Topcock. Is that the blowhole?
It starts to get a little shady there for me, but But I think it's not very like it's fake, it's not. I always thought before I had learned a little more that there's like a hole and it goes through.
Like a gap
It's
in
like
the
it's
mountains or
just
something.
yeah, and it's like there is, but there's you look at the mountains and you can kind of see like, all right, I guess maybe but it's kind of a stretch to like be like that's where it comes in. But yeah, it seems to be at the same spot. I don't think it's right after the Topcock Hills, but like a little bit farther, is. But I don't really know, man.
Yeah. So then once I hit the coast, it was like I just like went into like a haze. I mean, the sun went down, it got dark, and dude, I must have fallen asleep. I mean, I probably fell asleep like dozens of times going into safety. It was, like the whole thing was just a haze of like in and out of sleep, and just bouncing over driftwood, and I had to drop a dog in safety, which was I think I already said that was fine. And I guess Topcock Hills. It was like I was not stopping on that last run. There was no way I was stopping. It was like, this is just one more hill that's keeping me from getting to Nome, keeping me from fulfilling my goal. And that was like that kind of mindset, really. I just kept coming back to that. Like, this is the next thing that's in the way, and I'm going to get over it. This is the next thing that's in the way. I'm going to get through it. There's no way I was stopping on that last run. So, but then it was this similar leaving safety though, as it was to leaving Gullivan. Leaving safety, that snow was really abrasive again. And then they're like, oh, well, we rerouted the trail up ahead. There's a muskox that's been in the middle of the trail and not giving up the trail. So, you're only 22 miles from Nome, but just be careful. The last thing that you might face is a muskox. So,
oh my God.
I didn't see it. Laura had some videos of it. She showed me at the finish line, but I didn't see it. But yeah, once we got up over Cape, I don't know if it's called Cape Safety or Cape Nome, we could see the lights. It felt like it took forever to get to Nome, but the closer we got, the happier the dogs got, the faster they went. And then, we just tore down Front Street, and there was my family waiting for me. So
nice.
Yep.
Before we get into the feels there, I just say this because, I care about you, Ben. It is, I believe it is pronounced Lara. So next time you go and see Lara,
Laura.
Give it a Lara, because I call her Laura, and she corrected me on that, and I was like, I know that you want to say it right, and I don't want to correct you. That's weird, but I'm doing it because I know you appreciate it.
I've seen it written down, and I'm like, I honestly have tried to say it that way. So,
dude, I'm the same. It feels wrong.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way with that name. I can't say. It sounds weird coming out of my mouth. Lara. I always go to Laura, but yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Sean.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So reunited with the fam, 1,000 miles, accomplish your goal. Did you roast that dog? How did it feel?
It was great. I mean, it didn't sink in. I'll be honest. Like, I was so happy to see my family. Us talking through it right now, it's really been hard to kind of process it. Like, people go like, oh, how was it? And you go like, well, how do I tell you in like a casual 3-minute conversation about 11 and a half days and something that I've been trying to do for years. And it was great. It was everything I wanted it to be. That's kind of how that's how I've been summarizing it. And that's really, to put it, simply, it was everything I wanted it to be. My family didn't hate me at the end. I still got some money in the bank. I still got a job. My kids are, healthy and happy. So yeah, it's always trying to find that perfect balance of doing the thing that you want to do as a person, as sort of a adventurous, I don't know what the right word is, sort of a driven person, balancing that out with, the people that need you and that care about you and that need you to be there for them. So I think I did an okay job in this case. I don't always, but this one I think I did okay.
Nice. Yeah, that's a tough balancing act for sure. And man, congrats. That's an amazing accomplishment. You've got like almost all pretty much is there anything like that you haven't done that you're like itching to do in the mushing, whether it's a race or just a trip or anything with your dogs, like, in the general future, or is it like, this feels like, you just want to maybe just run some of those local races and continue to keep your dogs exploring and engaged and stuff? Or
Yeah, I don't. I've never done Cusco, and one I've scratched in 2 races. One of them was the Kobuk, so I got some unfinished business there.
Okay.
We'll see though. We'll see if I ever get to get. Yeah, we'll see if I
financially the Cusco is a good idea.
That's what I keep hearing.
And you can just finish, then you're gonna get your trip paid for, and you don't have to train. That's what everybody keeps saying. You don't have to have these long training winters. But then the bummer is, you get done with Cusco, it's January, you're like, well, the dogs are in great shape, I should sign up for whatever,
Right.
on the blank. Oh, maybe go walk, But yeah, that's cool. So, well, we can wrap up with your story of like, where are you from? How'd you get into mushing? Bring it around full circle, and get in the dogs. You live in, North Pole, Alaska, or just outside of Fairbanks. But yeah.
Yeah. Originally from Greenville, Pennsylvania. So that's about an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh. So north of Pittsburgh, and we're close to the Ohio border. So all of our news channels growing up came from Youngstown, Ohio. So my dad was a Cleveland Browns fan. We had season tickets to the Cleveland Browns, or him and his buddy had season tickets. So I get to go to Cleveland Browns games occasionally. We were kind of halfway between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Let's see. I came to Alaska in 2002 after I graduated college. Oh, we didn't have dogs growing up. Dogs weren't a thing. Dad wasn't interested in it. So we didn't. I mean, we had the occasional pet that my mom would bring home, but so I always blamed him on, you want the thing that you didn't have, or you couldn't have when you were younger. So then we couldn't have dogs. So now I have 30 dogs. So I got to Alaska in 2002. Worked in Anchorage for about 3.5 years at an environmental lab there. Didn't know anything about. I didn't even go to the Iditarod start when I was still at that point. Iditarod and dogs were not on my radar. When I was leaving for Alaska, I went back and visited some buddies at college, and my one buddy's like, "Oh yeah, so you're gonna move up to Alaska and like run the Iditarod?" I'm like, "What's the Iditarod? What are you talking about, man?" Ended up, I was working up on the slope. We got pregnant with our first kid, and I needed to get off the slope. So I found a job at the refinery. There's a couple refineries here in North Pole, Alaska. So we moved up to North Pole so I could work there and be home every night. And soon we lived right on a slough, like a creek that feeds the Chena River. And we had a yellow lab. So he would pull me on skis down the slough out to the Chena. And then he was good. Like once we got out there, he was done pulling. So I'd end up having to ski myself back. So I went on Sled Dog Central, which I don't think exists anymore, but thanks to Sean, it sounds like we might have another alternative to Sled Dog Central. So I went on Sled Dog Central, found a couple dogs from Burmeister, and my wife was super leery. She's like, "What do you mean we're going to have sled dogs?" And
she should be.
She was rightfully leery. Just kind of built from there. And I was always kind of like, it doesn't matter if I race or not. I just want to have fun with them. See Alaska. It's a new way to adventure in Alaska. And then you do a race. The first race I ever did was, I think it was the Solstice 50 or the Solstice 100 in Two Rivers. I was literally parked between Lance Mackey and Ali Zirkle. I was in between those two. And I was like, oh crap. I looked over at Lance and I was like, if I'm doing anything wrong, please tell me. Like if I'm getting in your way, like please just like tell me I'm being an idiot.
Oh
So,
yeah, I felt that feeling too.
yeah, there was kind of that time where Lance was winning and Ali was doing great, and there was a lot of momentum and interest, and it was a big deal. The mushing world was pretty had a lot of popularity. So yeah, I just kind of went from there, and then I was like, well, should I do Iditarod or should I do the Quest? And my wife goes, well, you got to prove yourself on the Quest first before you can go to the Iditarod. So that's why I did the Quest first.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
And you proved yourself.
You sure did. What's your wife's name?
Kim.
Kim. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Look, I don't know if I've met Kim yet, but look, hopefully we'll get the chance to do that. And the Quest 300 winning in 2018.
2018, yeah. So I ran the Quest the year before, and I'll be honest, like I often try to pick races where I feel like I could be competitive at, and that might mean that I'm going to pick a race that's like the Two Rivers 200 and go for it. Because I have a pretty good team, but we don't. But there's not 5 or 6 teams that can win it. There's only 2 or 3 teams that might win it. So I might have a shot. That. I don't always pick races that way, but if I want to be competitive, that's kind of what. And the Quest 300 has always been one that's easy logistically. And I saw Jesse Holmes win it 2 years before, and I was like, I see the way he did that. I think I could probably do that, even against some competitive teams. And that year, a lot of the more competitive teams dropped out, and I got, I had some luck, but I did have a plan. I did stick to my plan, and I ended up passing Joanna there at the last,
Oh, is Joanna Jagow?
Yeah.
Who's now changed her name to got married.
Yeah. So
okay.
And that's so I've had good luck on that. Everybody talks about Birch Creek. I feel differently about I like Birch Creek. I've had good luck on it. I've had good runs on it. It's not that different than the Chena River, which we run on every day. So So it worked out. I picked the right race, picked the right schedule, and it worked out. So
Birch Creek. It's the trail's not that hard. I think it's just, I guess you get heady maybe, but with all the switchbacks. But it is kind of fun. Like I can imagine if you just went out on Birch Creek for fun, especially March or April, it'd be a blast.
Well, it seems like the way back is always packed down, because everybody goes down it and packs it down, and then it sets up. And on the way back, it's, I've usually had 8 to 9 miles an hour on Birch Creek on the way back, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah. Brennan, do you have any? Yeah, fun. Do you have any anything you'd like to say? I can say some closing remarks, but
well, I was curious. I had a couple quick hitting questions about the Iditarod. Favorite checkpoint for you was.
That's not quick hitting. Probably Takatna.
Okay, and then your favorite run.
I had a good time on the burn. I know that sounds weird, but I had a phenomenal run across the burn, running up and down the dirt hills and that little glacier in the middle. It was daylight. It was nice out. The dogs were cooking, so I had fun.
Let's go with favorite moment outside of getting to Nome. We'll assume that's got to be okay. You're checking your bucket list item there, but was there a favorite moment or something within the race?
Yes. Nothing really spectacular about it, but just all the good feelings, leaving Koyuk with the blue sky and knowing that knowing that, this is probably going to happen. I'm going to get there. Nothing, there's not a whole lot left that's in the way. There was kind of a moment there leaving Koyuk. And then same thing coming out, like we talked about earlier, coming out of the Topcock Hills, knowing that, this is going to happen. It was both. Both. And
then he fell asleep 12 times.
Right. I had that on the Yukon River a few times. I was like, stop falling asleep. Stop falling asleep. You cannot let this race end because you fell asleep and fell off your sled.
That's funny. And my last one was you're like, did you have a favorite interaction with another musher, a fun interaction? I know you've already kind of told some stories, but just, any other thing that kind of stood out?
Yeah, so I was walking my dogs into Cotton, and after about the third dog, I look up and I realize that I'm walking them right in front of the live feed with Sean standing there. I'm like, oh crap! And they're like, a couple of them are pretty excited.
Oh, dude, that was hilarious.
I think a couple of them probably took a crap like right in front of the live feed camera.
And dude, he was like walking. You know how you see, literally arm like stretched out, like leash, like and he's like, I don't know where you're at in the 24 at this point, but like his dogs are just like pulling him around like out of control. And I was just like, I think his dogs are gonna leave the 24 just fine. It's funny to see, like things are going well. Pete Kaiser was doing a similar thing where he was walking his dogs. And he'd like walk them along next to his team, and like there'd be like three like kind of macho males, like and I'm like, I think his team is doing pretty well too, And Ryan Reddington's team was looking like that, but yeah. But go ahead and finish. But
no, that was it.
Okay, yeah, that was funny. You did it a couple of times, like this is great television. and then I said, hey, wait a second.
Yep.
And my other thing was it sounds like the Iditarod is something that you've done now and completed, and that there's some other unfinished business, but that from an Iditarod standpoint, the fans may not see you again, or is that like TBD? What's your thought there?
Yeah, if I do Iditarod again, it'll be like I said earlier, my son's going to college in the fall, so I got to spend a few years sending the money that direction instead of towards something big like I did. Or if I could do Cusco and make my money back on it and kind of make that work, that's a possibility. This team that I have now is, some of them, it was only their second race ever. So now I've got a veteran team that, once they finish 1,000-mile race, you can kind of do anything you want with them. So next year, well, not Iditarod, but some other, I could be competitive in mid distance with them next year, I think. And then beyond that, if I do Iditarod again, it'll be in 6 or 7 years. But I could see myself, getting into like trail breaking for the Quest or the Two Rivers races or the Copper Basin or something, driving the Stone Machine to open up trails and maybe getting involved like on the board side of some of those races or, that kind of thing, supporting the mushing community in that way, where I'm not having to be to spend so much time training dogs, just kind of play with the dogs. And then, this mushing community is only as good as the people who are giving back to it, which is why, I really appreciate what you guys are doing, but everybody's got their part to play. And if we don't play our part and give back, then, especially as mushers, it just kind of falls apart and things don't work out. And you can see the organizations like the Copper Basin who are just rolling because they have good people in place. And so, there are some local races here in the Fairbanks area that need people. They just need somebody to step in and I'm not saying I'm that person, but I could, support somebody or plug in that way. So I think it's time to give back for a while, a little bit more. It's hard when you have dogs because we're also busy and we have our stuff going on, and it's hard to volunteer your time to do other stuff. We're kind of, as mushers, we kind of tend to be takers rather than givers.
Yeah,
we're needy. But at the same time, that's part of the culture is that the mushers have to be there or the thing doesn't exist. So that's how I could see the next 4 or 5 years going. So, nice. But my mushers' plans are fickle. Ask me next fall. I might have a different answer.
I love it. I love it.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us, and it was fun seeing you out there, dude. I saw you probably one of the mushers I got to just interact with the most, and you're a good dude, it seems, and
fitting of your last name. Betty got the last name.
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't even mean that one.
Yeah, well,
But yeah, no, this is a really fun hour and a half that just flew by in the blink of an eye. So
Yeah, it does
thanks,
go-
man.
Yeah, it did go fast. I really appreciate it. And the one thing I'll say, Sean, when I first saw you at Finger Lake, the one thing that you can't see in these video podcasts is how phenomenally blue your eyes are. That was the thing that like shocked me. I was like, whoa, oh, he's a pretty handsome dude. And look at those.
Can you,
eyes.
yeah, you got to tell the ladies. Can you spread the word? All right.
Okay. All right. No, this is great. Thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to chat.